So if you're a longtime listener of the show, you know that I have a deep relationship with the Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson, and that was through my friendship with Rabbi Levi Deitch, who died several years ago, and I've talked about him on the show quite a bit. And it was suggested to me to interview my next guest, and I was so moved and so glad that he said yes, because the wisdom that I think we need at this time, and if you're listening, it's probably in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. If you're listening in the future, this is going to help you anyway, because crises and challenges come up. But if you're in the middle of the pandemic, the wisdom and grace that I hope we're going to be talking about today is going to be useful. Rabbi Simon Jacobson is one of the greatest Jewish scholars walking the earth today. He's a sought-after speaker. He's the author of Towards a Meaningful Life, which is an exploration of the wisdom of Rabbi Schneerson. And there's nobody better to bring that to life, because I think he spent the 80s and the 90s bringing all of the Rebbe's teachings to life for us. And I have several of those books. He also has the Meaningful Life Center, which is online. It's a marriage of the spiritual and the secular, of the best of like coaching and life skills and spirituality, and that you can get lost for years on this website. I'm going to put that in the show notes so you can go there and learn from Rabbi Jacobson. Rabbi, thank you for being here.
My pleasure, my honor, and a very touching introduction. It's really great to make this connection and with you and your audience. And I commend you for what you're doing, especially now. We need to use the airwaves, and we need to use every platform to really connect deeper than ever. They say social distancing, but I like to say soulfully closer than ever.
I see that, and I experience it. I see a lot of dirty, rotten things that I'm not happy with, and then I see so much beauty, so much connection, so much spirit in the world that you can't. Mr. Rogers says, look for the people who are doing good, right? Look for the helpers. And it's just all around.
Absolutely, which is beautiful to see, because often in times of crisis, sometimes it brings out the worst in people. You see looting and selfishness and cannibalism. I don't mean necessarily literally, but basically dog eats dog. And here there's been a surge of humanitarianism and volunteering and helping. And I think this shared vulnerability has brought out a certain deeper grace, which is very gratifying to see, of people's inner souls. Because basically their outer lives have been disrupted. Everything, schedules, plans, work, school, summer plans, sports. I mean, there's nothing that hasn't been disrupted and upended and destabilized. And this is the time where your inner soul, your inner resources are critical.
We're left with ourselves, basically, like, and who we are and what do we want to create in the world. So what, I'm sure people come to you with all sorts of questions and needs and wants in this time. What are you finding the biggest need is for you, for people when they come to you?
Well, the first thing I'm experiencing mostly is what you see in any traumatic situation, trauma and shock. I think people still can't wrap their heads around it. They think this nightmare will end tomorrow, the next day. And because so much has been disrupted, it's not like, okay, I can't go to my workplace. There's also no baseball season. There's no sports, no performing arts, no restaurants, all the public spaces. So much that we've been dependent on, our security blankets and comfort zone are no longer there like that overnight. So the first thing I think is a lot of shock and trauma that's not even verbalized, because people just don't even know where to go. So there's a lot of survival mode. What am I going to do? How do I, first of all, protect myself and my family, my loved ones? And secondly, economically, some of us, many people have been laid off. Many people are concerned with being laid off. Even if not, you're running a business. What are you going to do? We all hope for the best. This is over. But as we see time passes, this may not end so quickly. So I see what really happens when the rug is pulled out from under you in every possible way. You really, totally no control. You have no control. There's no control. Nobody knows what's going to be in 3 weeks from now, let alone 3 months from now. So what I'm sensing is a deep vulnerability, fragility that suddenly, and remember, we haven't seen anything. The last time this country was disrupted was World War II. I mean, 9/11. Okay,
But
9/11.
the whole country wasn't disrupted, and there was
Right.
a return to normalcy pretty quickly.
Right.
Right,
And
you could go to work and hold on to something, and here there's not a lot to hold on
we
to.
basically had 60, 70 years of prosperity and growth with a few bumps here and there. And then suddenly we feel like we're the Middle Ages, quarantining, a virus that nobody can understand. Is it mutating? We're only trying to contain it. We're not trying to eradicate it yet. I mean, they're working on it, but right now it's containment. Deaths, unfortunately, of people that we know, loved ones. So there's this collective vulnerability is the biggest thing. And people are really, they don't even know what to ask. It's like they're not even asking why. It's almost like, what am I supposed to do? I'm not, suddenly my kids are home, if you have kids. You know, okay, there's online school. Like everything has to be recalibrated. So what I've been doing is just, first of all, obviously at times like this, the first thing is you need to soothe and comfort and show people we're in it together. We're not lost. Remember, even if all our institutions disappear, you didn't disappear. You're alive. Please, thank God. And you're breathing. And you have family. You have loved ones. So what you need to do, yes, maybe you haven't worked on those inner resources for a long time. Now that's what you need to do. It's like, because you can't rely on those crutches. You can't say, okay, I'm going out to dinner tonight. And
can I tease that out a little bit?
Sure.
Because
sure.
I know what you mean, and a lot of people do know, but a lot of people don't know what you mean. Because a lot of people, I find that most of American society and most just kind of modern human life is we are our job, we are our entertainment, we are the things that we do. And when all those things disappear, and we haven't spent time cultivating the fact that we are here, what you're saying is a foreign language.
Absolutely. I'll tell you something. I'll rephrase what you said. I always often ask people, who are you? What makes you tick? Who's the real you? And they give you their business card. I say, that's what you do. It's not who you are. And often people will say, well, you know what? Sadly, what I do has become who I am. So that absolutely, our identities have become defined by our schedules, by expectations, by our financial status, by our work, by our social interactions. And so I will definitely, let's break it down into a few groups. So there are people who are completely lost because that's all their entire life was identified. You know, what am I going to do with my season, my season tickets to the Yankees or to the Red Sox or to wherever, the Nationals,
Thank you.
And that's completely like off the map. So people like that are literally like you've been thrown off a ship and you don't know what to do. You're lost at sea. So that the audience like that or a person like that, the first and most important thing is to show love and to show I'm with you. I'll hold your hand. Let's stabilize our lives. Like basically you're not sinking, you're not drowning, you just lost your bearings. So you have to help a person begin the journey inward and say, okay, well, let's talk about the things you love. Is there anything you love? Yes, I love my spouse. I love my children. I love my parents. I love my friends. I said, was that taken from you? No. So there you have something. So like, like you lose your security blanket, let's replace it. And it could even be you're replacing it with something even better and more permanent. So I actually began doing an interesting thing. I began doing a daily, we call it daily spiritual antidote, precisely for this reason. Okay, some things have been taken away from us now. They've been disrupted, upended. But let's focus on things you do have going on for you. You have a mind, you have your heart. Okay, you may not have exercised it. You didn't have time for it. So now you begin. Now, as you pointed out, there are others, however, that have already explored spiritual journey. Many people who are in recovery, who have lost a lot in their lives, have already lost control. People like that, in a way, are easier to navigate here because they've already hit rock bottom.
We're like, welcome to our world. We've always known the world was like this.
So I really do think you have to see people differently. But at the end of the day, what is in common with all of us is a most eloquent concept that the dignity of your life is your soul. It comes from within, not from without. So even if you spend 30, 40, 50, I don't care how many years, that your identity was defined by your work, by your schedules, by your social interactions, by which countries you visited, which restaurants you've eaten at, what entertainment you've enjoyed. there's something ticking inside you. There's a beautiful expression in the book of the Song of Songs. I am asleep, but my heart is awake. When a person is in love, they know you're in love 24/7, even when you're asleep. So it could very well be your material life, which defines you, is right now asleep, but there's something awake that you need to access. That heartbeat, we'll call it your soul beat. And it's not that difficult. Today, I'm finding, even people, I get all day calls and interactions, especially because I'm producing all this material. So a guy who was always in the finance world, very smart guy, very soulful person, but he's always busy with money. He called me a few weeks ago. He said to me, something you've always been teaching, which I never really integrated it. Even though I felt it was right, is that the world of security does not come from outside temporary, impermanent things. Even though they call it financial securities, it's not secure because it's a foundation that shakes. How could you, he says, and I never really, because I was riding high, I was making money, I'm happy, etc. Now I realize that is not a place of security. All I have right now is my inner life, which I never really exercised. It's like it's atrophy. It's like muscles that haven't been used. So the first thing is it's just like a good coach. We're going to exercise these muscles, and you're going to realize and come to learn that you have resources you just were not aware of. Now, it's not easy because transitions are always difficult. And many people are still holding on to that hope. It'll all be over, and tomorrow I'm back to my job.
That's the question people say to me. So when do you think it's going to be back to normal? When do you think it's going to be back to normal? Like, it's never going to be back to normal. You're never going to be the same.
And I always say to people, listen, one thing we know for sure now, that we don't know what's happening. Doctors don't know, that we don't know. And actually surrendering to the unknown is a very healthy thing, because it's one thing I may know, I don't know, but once you come to clarity, this is not in my control. And as I've been saying, and I say again and again, you don't control the events around you, but you control everything inside you. Your attitude, your values. Are you going to rise, or are you going to cower in fear and retreat, or are you going to allow yourself to become a greater person? Because to sit around, this is the worst possible thing, and be frustrated. When is it going to end? Why did God do this? Why is this happening? Is victim mentality. The only people that are really not just surviving, but like thriving, are the ones that say, what could I do to serve others? How can I help? Who do I love? Who can I call? Who can I volunteer? If you're into yourself, that's to me, that's a collision course, because the self is, okay, it's all about me. I'm not comfortable. My life is disrupted. Now what?
Right. Forget the judgment call on that. It's just not practical.
I didn't mean it in any critical way. I'm just stating as a fact. I just see it. I see it for myself. The more I extend myself to help others, the more I'm at certain inner peace. There's still danger. I know relatives and people who have died. There are people struggling for their lives. There's the economic challenges. So I'm not in any way minimizing it. But there's a powerful. You talked about some of your roots, our roots. I'm very proud to say this, that as a Jew, the Jewish people are here for 3,800 years from Abraham. We've been through pandemics, epidemics, plagues, genocides, holocausts, you name it, and we became a stronger people for it. We're coming from Passover last week. There's a powerful verse in the book of Exodus. It's really the foundation of all recovery. It's universal. It's not a religious statement even. It's a psychological one. It says, as they were oppressed and afflicted, in direct proportion to that, they thrived and they flourished. A literal biblical verse, which anyone who's suffered knows what it means. It means that your suffering has the potential to make you a greater person. And we're not asking for suffering. It's unwanted, it's unexpected, and we'd rather it not come. But now it's here. And another very important thing to tell people now, don't ask why. We don't know why. If you're a believer, it's God's mysterious ways. If you're a non-believer, you definitely don't know why. There's no why. But you can ask, what am I going to do about it? It's like the storm has come. You're a good swimmer. A good swimmer doesn't ask why a storm has come and doesn't start getting all hysterical. Okay, there's a storm. Now I have to readjust. Maybe I'll float. I won't fight the tide. What will a bad swimmer do? A bad swimmer will right away panic. A storm, what am I supposed to do? Will try to fight the tide, and they could end up drowning. I'm just giving it as an analogy. So a good swimmer navigates. We got to navigate, okay? And I'm not minimizing, but we have to stay at home. I gave many workshops right before Passover. Okay, this Passover Seder, God does not want us to be with large groups and Passover programs and large families. It may just be you and one more person. It may just be you alone. Now, does that mean you disappear? Let's say you were stranded on an island. So you could either just become frantic and say, why did this happen to me? Or you could say, this is where I was led to. What am I going to do about it? Let me figure it out.
When you argue with reality, you only lose 100% of the time.
Exactly. So I think it's a lot about that type of attitude. And what I do find is that I hear this from many people. And I'm not saying to toot my horn. I'm just saying what I'm experiencing. People say to me, your words are like a lifeline. Because you hear encouragement, you hear courage. It's like a commander-in-chief in the middle of a war. So there's been a setback. So many people will just run for cover. But a commander-in-chief says, look, there is a setback. I'm not denying it. We're not going to be reckless. We're not going to go into the enemy, expose ourselves to the enemy. What we will do is regroup, and we're going to figure out how to maneuver. Maybe now we have to, like a business, when a business is a downturn, it's a time to reflect, introspection. Maybe it's a time to evaluate what you did right, what you didn't do right. So at the end of the day, I wish it wasn't with suffering and pain, but there's no question it's a wake-up call. Because when something is taken away from you that you were so dependent on and so reliant and felt it will be permanent, the real test of your life then is the real test. What are you going to do? Are you going to sink or are you going to swim? And essentially, it brings out the best in you if you allow it to. And I really, sincerely, absolutely, I say that to you. I say it to myself. I say it to everyone that's listening to this. You need to know that. Because when you have that confidence, you can forge ahead. If you start doubting and thinking, this is going to completely destroy me, that's not an attitude you want to have. Now, I know it's easier said than done. Trust me, I know people who are, the words are words. That's why we need to be there for each other. Anyone that has a little more strength has to help another person. We all have to help lean on each other in a time like this and realize that, as we know, race, color, religion, faith, all that has disappeared. This disease, this virus does not discriminate. And it also teaches us about that we're one people, whether from China to the United States. Not pointing fingers now. Obviously, there's accountability of what was done, what wasn't done. But this is not a time to start accusing. Now's the time to show what we as humanity can do. I really think of it in historical terms, that one day we'll look back at 2020 and say, what did you do? Did the human spirit prevail? Or did we become fractured and fragmented and just the worst of us? And I want to be able to say that we rose to the occasion. We demonstrated for all of history that in the year 2020, there was a pandemic, and human beings demonstrated the nobility and the majesty of what humans are possible. That should be the story. In addition, obviously, the pandemic happened. That's a given. But that's a story, the narrative we can write. We can write that narrative. What did we do?
So that narrative is being written on a macro level where we're still dealing with ourselves so that we can look back on ourselves and what did we do with 2020? How did we respond to suffering? How did we respond to the unexpected? And so when you talk about cultivating the inner life, what are the first steps, because by the way, I find this pandemic so similar to a midlife crisis, to the illness, the heart attack, the loss of job, the loss of marriage, or whatever it is that kind of jerks us awake in midlife to say, oh, what I knew isn't, necessarily true. The future looks uncertain. Now I have to find a new equilibrium. I find this in the same way. Where do you have people start now so that they can start to cultivate that inner life?
Okay, I want to amplify a moment of what you just said, and I think that transition to answer your question. You're absolutely right. You're in your 20s and 30s. You may have had some disappointments. People have losses, but overall, you're just beginning your life. Things are grand and they're grandiose. You're idealistic. You haven't really, most cases, experienced true trauma. And you just really like a certain free abandon, which is beautiful at that age. That's what it should be like, just like little children should be playing and exploring. But as you said, midlife, life's realities. At that point, you probably had a loss in your life, a parent or a relative. You may have gone through a divorce, difficult relationship situation, financial challenges, psychological, emotional ones. Things start coming to roost. I don't know what the word is. So there's a fascinating concept. It's a Kabbalistic, mystical concept, but it helps, I think it really helps understand that stage, because it's a very complicated stage. It's one thing, I may be delusional, but I'm comfortable. I have my security blankets, my comfort zones, my pillows.
My delusions is working.
Yeah, right. But what happens in that vacuum? So the concept goes like this, that between two paradigms, for one paradigm to metamorphosize into a new paradigm, you need to go through a void in between, a void in a vacuum. There's no way out of that. Because because if there's no void, then you just have an extension of the past. Mm. It's like shedding a layer of skin to assume a new layer of skin. You got to lose your baby teeth before you get your adult teeth. And we all, creativity is a child of frustration. A mother goes through birth pains to give birth to a new child. Success is always going to be preceded, true success and excellence, by some price you paid, some law. It's like you have to lose this, basically, I would say, suspend your previous perspective to gain new perspective. But that stage is very, very disorienting. It's very unnerving.
I think panic comes up when that.
Because I don't have and I'll just tell you a short anecdote from my own life. I was a relatively good swimmer. I'm talking about a kid. I'm maybe 10, 11, 12 years old. Summer camp or summer vacation. And I wanted to learn how to dive. So I went on the diving board and I couldn't bring myself to jump into the water. Okay. I start counting. Then I said, you know what? I'll dive from the edge of the pool. I couldn't do that either. And every day would be, that countdown. Okay, I'm going to count from 10 to 1. Now I'll count from 1,000 to 1. And then tomorrow after dinner or after lunch or after break, As 2 summers passed, I never learned dive. So one day I said to myself, you know what I'm going to do? I'll sit on the edge of the pool and and I was terrified until, you know what happened? Someone came and pushed me. I didn't even realize they came and just pushed me. And you know what? I survived. I always asked myself, what was the problem? I knew I was comfortable in water. I wasn't afraid of water. I was comfortable on land. It was that moment, that's my theory, that I'm suspended. I'm not on the ground and I'm not in the water. So psychologically, that unknown is very, very frightening. It's just my own analogy.
Well, it's like skydiving. They say the scariest part of skydiving isn't the fall from the plane. It's the threshold of the plane. It's like just before.
Right. They say also tightrope walkers that the hardest part everyone thinks is the middle of the tightrope. No, it's when you make the turn, because as long as you're going, you have your focus to your destination. But as soon as that focus is gone, you have to create the focus anew. That's the most difficult time. So going back to the question you asked, so understanding this is vital. Understanding that life is not static. It's like a film. And don't get stuck in any one frame. So your frame of life, let's say you talk about midlife, till your 30s or 40s, was a certain story narrative. But then things got upended, which, as you just accurately conveyed, is the same story collectively of what's happening now. So you could say, okay, it's all upended, it's over. But it's not over. The film continues. The story, the narrative continues. Just know now what's happening is you're losing a certain paradigm in order to gain a new one. And that's always going to be uncomfortable by definition, because you don't, it's like an unknown. It's the confusion that comes before an epiphany. So in that sense, what you do, the first thing I say is just be aware of the process. Know that growth always consists of losing something you had before in order to gain something greater. Not to lose as an end in itself. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say in answering is you need to immediately, as I said earlier, replace something that is now been paused or upended or maybe forever suspended with something else. And what that means is I suggest a morning meditation just to begin. It's based on a Hebrew prayer, but it's universal. When you wake up, as soon as you wake up, just thank whoever you want to thank for returning my soul to me. Know that you have a soul inside of you. Close your eyes close your ears, taste, touch, and smell, your senses, and what are you left with? So most people initially say, they've been so accustomed to sensory stimulation, they think they disappear. You find that you don't disappear. You're left with your inner life, your soul. Maybe time to get to know it. And what happens is you realize we're so overstimulated with our senses, the things we see and hear, taste, touch, especially when we're in the world as it was a few months ago, that maybe it's a healthy thing to, quiet it all down, which is essentially what mindfulness is, any contemplation. In Hebrew, they call it, the mystics call it hidbonanut, which is a contemplation. It's essentially shutting out the outer noises and the turbulence to be able to access that inner place. And do it. This is not an exercise that should be overwhelming. It can take 2 minutes. You want more time, more time. People do things that are digestible. If you start trying to bite off more than you can chew, I see people offering extensive meditation. Most people are not going to, but in the morning, just say, I'm lying here in the morning. I just awoke. Think to yourself, what's sleep? What's wake? What happened? Clearly, my consciousness has now arisen. Maybe if you're intrigued, go read something about it. I have in my book, Toward a Meaningful Life, the first chapter, and I'll just point out an anecdote interesting. The first line of my book is, have you ever cried for no apparent reason? Have you ever felt joy for no good reason? And this is the voice of your soul. As a matter of fact, Kirk Douglas, who just passed away a few months ago, when was it? He had a stroke and it was very debilitating for him. And his assistant told me that someone gave him a copy of my book, Toward a Meaningful Life. And he would cry uncontrollably. He was in a stroke. He lost his faculties. And you can imagine the emotional frustration. You can't control your life, even though you want to. You want to move your hand and you can't. You want to speak and you can't. You can imagine it's like being trapped in a box. And he read that line, and it changed his life. In his book, he has a book, I think, called Climb the Mountain, something like that. And he says, I read Toward a Meaningful Life, have you ever cried for no apparent reason? This is the voice of your soul. He said, I started thinking about my soul. So my point is that when you start thinking about what's inside, and now is the time to do it, because the outer stimulation has been somewhat slowed down. You could either say, I'm terrified because I don't know what to do, or you could discover yourself. Maybe go on a date with yourself. Get to know yourself. So I think these are the two things: to recognize that the discomfort of the unknown is part of transitioning to a greater paradigm. And number two, start getting to access your own inner self, however you want to do that.
Yeah, I took from your website, even when our way of life appears to be in jeopardy, we must school ourselves to detect in the upheaval the seeds of transformation. The contemplation of what's taken away from me, which is certainty. It may be a job, it may be health, it may be anything, but certainty is, I think, the biggest thing that's been taken away. And what's left is what is worth contemplating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, anyone's been any spiritual discipline knows one of the most important things is to create space. You can't have all kinds of distractions and expect to allow yourself to be heard, your own voice. And remember, it's not just noises, physical noises. It could be the demands of your father and mother. It could be the demands of your employees and clients. They basically control your life. So you need to create space where, who am I independent of all the forces in my life? My schedules, my appointments, my clients, my employees, my parents, my children, whatever. And that is a very healthy thing to do, but many of us are not comfortable doing it.
So that's a highlighter moment for me for this conversation, because I shout from the rooftops. I am yelling at people, please just stop for a moment. And what you said, I think that is like to put at the top of a journal page, who am I without my job, my family, my titles, all this stuff, and to spend time with that, the treasures of the universe show.
Look, let's take it further. And now this has been imposed upon us, not by will. It's been imposed. Basically, so much of that stimulation that we were people, I have no words. If you asked somebody 3 months ago, I'd like to meet with you tonight. I want to talk about your soul. Now, tonight I'm going to a new restaurant, a new Italian restaurant, and I really don't have time. I said, when can we speak? contact me after the summer, maybe before Rosh Hashanah or something. My point is, like, so much of what we thought our musts and necessities in life are not. Let's be very blunt, they're not. Now, we all understand health and livelihood are important, but the dependence that controls my life, they're not. That is a very healthy awareness. As I said, again, if it came without pain, it would be, but for some mysterious reason, usually these things don't come without some form of pain and loss. Because we're human beings and we're like absurd creatures who don't wake up until something is taken from us. You know, how many people do you hear saying, offering gratitude as much as they complain? You know, when something's not working, hey, what's the problem? Now, we know that gratitude today become very popular. But I remember being at a conference in Lima, Peru. It was on happiness. So it was myself and a psychologist. I came more from the spiritual psychological perspective. He was more secular psychological. And he said something interesting, which is that if someone gives you a gift of $1,000, and then at some point you lose $1,000, do they counter each other? And the answer is no. You need to make $4,000 to feel as happy, because the sense of loss is deeper than the sense of gain. In other words, we basically feel entitled. So if I lost $1,000, if you give me $10,000, that can compensate for the $1,000 that I lost. So it's interesting. So his point was, for every complaint you make, you should say 4 times thank you that day. You know, 4 times. I mean, I don't know if it's exact the mathematical formula, but it was a very good insight. And of course, another point that must be made, we're addicts. Let's be honest, we're junkies. We're junkies on material pleasures. We constantly, they say that by the age, in the Western world, by age 20, the average person has been exposed to 1 million advertisements. 1 million advertisements. Whether TV, billboards, radio, internet. That means you've seen ads for cigars and for travel and for flowers and for romance and for, you name it. And you definitely did not buy all those products. So you're left with a sense of inadequacy. Look what's out there. You know, if you only had one option in your life. Now, I think that's a blessing. Prosperity is a blessing, but it has also, it's a double-edged sword. It creates a sense of like invulnerability. I could get anything from Amazon Prime within an hour. And now we're quarantined. I can't even go out to have fun, you know. So I think the addiction to material life is something we have to also look at. And we know it's not easy to get off your addiction. Now, I'm using the word, I know it's an aggressive word, because usually addiction is alcohol, drugs, sex, porn, gambling, you know, the extreme ones. But addiction could also be to money. It could be to your life schedules and a lifestyle. It could be to material success. You know, I was always shocked when I would hear the stories that after the Depression, people actually committed suicide because they lost their fortunes. I remember asking my father, I was a child, I said, why would someone, they have family, they have their lives. He says their lives became their money. And if they lose their money and their reputation, they think they have nothing left. I found it so sad. That means you talk about investments, you want to diversify. You put all your investments in material success and that's gone. What do you do then? That's why you need to know that you have many other resources.
You know, and people are worried about that happening now. Like it is happening now. People are killing themselves. The suicide rates among middle-aged men are skyrocketing anyway. Before this, it's going to be a big cause of death, mental illness, all this stuff. But when I slow down and I think about, I used to be taught, you know, they used to say suicide is such a selfish thing. Be mad at the person who committed suicide. And I've pivoted on that of what must it be like to be so hopeless, and I've been suicidal, is, you know, so hopeless that you think that you're better off, the world's better off, you love your children, you love, and still the only choice is I need to kill myself. I need to not be here anymore. Right. So when material stuff goes away, think about that, how powerful that addiction to that identity. You lose the job title, you lose your standing, you lose your, you know, all this stuff, how empty you are without that. And then the compassion for people to take their hands off it. You know, it's not like, hey, you know, you got a soul. Hey, stop looking at your title. Stop looking at how you look, you know, so you lose 10 pounds. it is so glued together that
Absolutely.
pain
Absolutely.
is
I'm
worth
totally with you.
empathy.
I hope what I said did not come across as right.
Not at all. It's
Okay.
everything.
But that's why I use the word addiction, because we know
Totally.
if someone will say someone's addicted to heroin, you know what? Get off your heroin. What are you getting on heroin? What are you dependent? Just wake up and go get a job and love your family. Once you become dependent and your myopic vision, that's all I see. That's all I see, and that's why I agree with you. We cannot judge. I was spoken as a child, just wondering, but that's exact. So what do? And I see this now, and anyone I would talk to, I would say, look, I'm not telling you, okay, wake up, there's a soul. You have to do it like with any addiction. It's a slow process. You don't just cold turkey. You say, okay, look, let's find one thing in your life that you could hold on to that is valuable. You know, you build it. You build. It's like when your castle has crumbled. Let's slowly build another castle. Now, unfortunately, there are people that are too hopeless and desperate, and they may not be ready to do so. But look, we're speaking now. Hopefully, maybe one person hears this even and says, maybe there's a glimmer of hope. Maybe there's someone I can call. We all know that these are like lifelines that could actually save a life. When a person hears, like a lot of people are just in their apartments, their basements locked, desperate, and then they turn something on, they hear something that resonates. I'm not saying their lives change, but it could give them that little edge that says, you know what? Let me try something. Let me read something. Let me speak to someone. And that's what I would tell anyone that's desperate. I wouldn't say, oh, wake up, you got a soul. I'd say, you know something? I see your perspective, but remember, your perspective is not the only perspective. And maybe let's do something together. Let's read something. Let's share something. I find the best way to fight darkness is not with darkness. You don't fight darkness with a whip and say, why are you dark? You bring a little light in and it dispels darkness. You always find an opening. You say, is there anyone you love? No, I don't love anyone. Nobody loves me. That's usually what you hear from people who are very desperate. I said, there's nobody on earth that ever loved you that you love. Okay, let's say, do you like music? Yeah, but I can't listen to music now. I said, let's listen to a song together. And my point is, I don't know where it gives, but everybody has there's an ember. It's like I think it was like a pilot flame. So, and I've told many people this, who I'm close with, where I could say it. I say, listen, your darkness is very dark, but I have to tell you something. You don't see it right now, but there's also light in the world. And my connection and my passion for light is just as strong as your passion for darkness. So let's fight it out, you know? Let's see. My point is not to fight. My point is to show them that there's another. You're telling me I should see it your way, fine. But I want to just share with you, there's also other perspectives. And you never know. Sometimes it comes down to physical exercise. Sometimes it just goes to fresh air. Just get out of your bubble. Get out of your rut. I'm telling you, sometimes you just need someone to shake things up in very interesting, counterintuitive ways. Like many times when people really give you their darkness, they're almost expecting you to become aggressive. And you say, you know what? You're a beautiful person. And the person says, how could you say that? I've just been so miserable. I've been so insulting. I said, I don't know. I just see beauty inside you. And they say, you're putting me on? And at some point, it's like, it shows them that they don't have it all figured out. I mean, I can go on and on. I'm just, since we talk.
Both of us can go on and on. What we do for a living is addictive also, because we get to find that light in people. My life has been guided by reading about the Rabbi, talking about giving out his dollars on Sundays. And when they said, you know, you've been here all day, aren't you tired? And he says, who gets tired counting diamonds? And I was struck by that, because he's counting New York Jews. Like, to find the light, to find the diamond in my people, the New York Jews, and to see it that way was something that just really struck me. And I've spent my whole life since then, trying to find the diamond in every single person that I meet, no matter what it looks like, no matter what it feels like. And I don't know what that's done for anybody else, but for me, it's brought joy in my life. It's brought love in my life, and it's brought diamonds in my life. So I am not doing it for other people. I'm doing it because my life is better when I see diamonds all around. It's such a beautiful way to live.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it also gives you strength, because if someone said to you, hey, lift up 200 pounds of stones, and then you'll own them, who needs it? But if someone says 200 pounds of diamonds, you'll say, give me 300 pounds.
I'll
Because
figure it
the
out.
value overshadows the exertion. I always tell this to people. People say, it's too much work. I said, if it was diamonds, you wouldn't tell me that. It's too much work because you don't see the value proposition. But if you saw the value on the other side of it, there are people who sit to learn instruments, pay, or athletes, kind of building that, kind of discipline they need. You think anyone's interested to spend hours and hours in training and say, enough is enough. But that's how you achieve excellence. And you recognize that that disciplines have value. Many people say, well, why do I need to do that? I can just get it easy. So that's another key point, that there's no success without some form of constraint.
So I want to go back just to now recap what we've been talking about. For me, this is a forced midlife crisis. This is a forced rehab from a lot of addictions that we had. And as you said earlier in some of your comments, is now is a really great time to take stock in what you value. And it could be something. I remember when I was suicidal, the two things that I knew I loved were chocolate chip cookies and the Judds and the color blue. Right. So I bought things that were blue, like that was the only thing I could figure out that was important to me. Everything else was bleak. So, that's a really low bar there. But now what's important? Your family, your, what you want to create, your art, whatever it is that's important, because that's what you're going to take in when society turns back on. Now all those distractions are going to be distractions and intrusions on the things that you value.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly the story. Human beings are complex creatures, but the best of us is, where it begins, when we were children. Interestingly, you and I were once little children. And I always say this, I say, like, when it gets to technology, they say an iOS 11 is better than an iOS 10 or Android, whatever. And when it comes to life, I think the version 1.0 is the purest us, the freshly fallen snow, who you are when you're born. So looking at children, I find, besides having children and grandchildren, I find is the ultimate. I mean, even in science, you always want the template before it's been distorted. So you can say, okay, what's a healthy reaction? And the best place is a child that's born before they assumed attitudes of parents and society and peer pressure and all the other stuff. And I think accessing they call the inner child, accessing that childlike, even vulnerability in a good way, healthy way, and love and trust and security, I find that's a very healthy way to go back almost to that child experience. Obviously with adult seasoning, and we need to protect ourselves, but being able to go back sometimes to simple truths. What does a child need most? They don't need gifts, trips. It's nice. Restaurants. A child just needs attention and a little love. It's like a flower. A flower needs water. So some of the basic truths of life we can learn from our children. And we just don't have time usually. Now we do. So the truth, my point I'm trying to say is, it's a lot different when you tell someone who says, my life is not working, whether it's midlife or other situations or now the pandemic. I say, your life is not working. You say, 1 second. Because you've created a structure. That structure is not working. It's not about you. You've got plenty of resources. You just never use them. So let's look at a child. What makes a child's life work? They don't have a job. They don't go to social events. They don't go to clubs and parties and so on. A child simply is the basic structure, the basic DNA of the human being is love, relationships, exploration, ideas, imagination. So I'm not trying to say let's go become childlike, but let's strip away the social conventions and the man-made institutions that we've become so occupied with, and let's just go down. What are you at your core, as we were saying before? And I think children can teach us a lot about that. A lot. Children, you tell a child, hey, listen, I have $1 billion for you. You tell me which child's going to get excited. They won't even know what you're talking about, unless they've already been programmed. Now, if you tell them, I have a billion candies for you, yeah, I love candy, My point is that the things they value are not man-made. They're natural. And we impose upon children and upon ourselves new man-made structures. So I find that to be extremely liberating. Extremely liberating. And maybe that's a home exercise as well for those that have children at home. Why don't you learn from them instead of them learning from you?
Again, I think this is the perfect time to figure out what is you and what is your addiction. What is you and what are the things that you thought were you? And it's
a simple exercise would be make a list of the 5 most important things in your life. And I'll tell you why I'm saying this. If you ask that question to people 3 months ago, 2 months ago, a year ago, and I did, you know what they usually answer? An American average man or woman or teenager, they'll answer these 5. Money, happiness, whatever that means, sexuality, video games, sports, maybe some hero or fan that they, something like that. Nothing that's permanent, nothing that has like a type of ethereal value, Now, if you ask somebody during World War II, they'd say freedom. Well, for Jews, it was to not be annihilated, the things that really matter.
Just don't kill me, please.
Right. So the comforts of our lives have created a new sense of priorities. Now, no one's going to answer those 5 answers. No one's going to say that. People are going to say now, security, safety, love, my value system. I mean, you see how quickly something shifts when everything's taken from you. It's
what are your 5?
My 5 have not changed now than before, because thank God I've been blessed to be around the right people. My 5 is number 1 is fulfilling your mission in life. Why are you here? That would be the top one probably. Why are you here? Because everything follows from that. Your mission statement. Then you obviously that defines how you spend your time. So for me, my mission, I'll define it, is very clearly to use my skills, which includes writing and speaking and teaching and counseling, to help people find their mission, to help clear up blockages, to be able to cut to the chase, get through the smoke screens, be able to identify what are your core issues. That's my mission. That's what everything I do is around that. So when there's a crisis like this, I feel like almost like I've been trained for this moment. This is what I'm trained for. I don't even have to plan it. It just comes naturally to me, because that's what I've always believed in the first place. I didn't need a crisis to wake me up to my mission. Now, again, I'm not saying I happen to be lucky. I was blessed with my parents, the Rabbi Schneerson. I was around people who served, who knew life was more about giving than taking. But there are many people out there who think taking is more important than giving. And it's about me rather than about the other, or about serving a higher purpose. To me, that was always a given. Now, it doesn't mean I'm a human being like everybody. We all have our selfish moments. We all have our obsessions and things that seduce us and so on. But overall, that is the focus. And I believe when a person has that mission, sense of mission, then whether you're young life, midlife, or old life, or age, whatever we call it, seniors, that mission just takes on different shapes and forms. But you're here. You were born you wake in the morning telling yourself, God has renewed my contract. What am I going to do with my life now? A few months ago, I have no time to think about it. I'm showering, I'm rushing, coffee. I got to get on the train. We got to commute to work. Now you should think about that. Why were you given another day of life? What are you going to do? And make a plan. This doesn't mean don't take care of your needs, but what are you going to do for humanity? What's a mark in the universe? And especially today. I honestly, I have to say this. I'm so inside of me, not in a negative way, feel that if we don't rise to the occasion now, then what would it take? What do you need more than this? What do we need? We need, God forbid, a nuclear annihilation of the universe. So to me, looking at this is like this is the time where you have to stand up. And unfortunately, many people are in a reactive mode. And I think those of us that can be proactive have to share that and get as many people to be more proactive, more initiate. Don't just wait for something to happen. Wait for the press conference and what the doctor and Trump are going to say, or whatever it is. Whether you hate him or you love him. And it's not even relevant to this discussion. The point is, be proactive. Initiate. Make a phone call. Text somebody. Email. I mean, people say, what can I do? I said, you know what? You don't even have to come up with any idea. Take an idea that someone shared with you and pass it on. You can pass it on to 1 million people today. The whole pandemic, if it taught us anything, is that there's a few degrees of separation between us.
One of my neighbors brought bottles of wine with a roll of toilet paper on it and put it on people's front steps. I was like, that is just exquisite.
I am a big believer that for every negative, you have to do an equal positive, if not more. So if there's a pandemic, we have to create a pandemic of goodness and kindness.
Love it. So the book is Toward a Meaningful Life. The Meaningful Life Center, I'm going to put that on the show notes so that people can find your writing, because you're writing current stuff, like right now, what to do now, what to feel, what like very visceral, good stuff. I'm actually going to put your interview with Ellie Nash on the show notes also, because it's just a brilliant conversation that you guys had. Is there anything else that I should be pointing people towards with what you're doing now?
Well, meaningfullife.com is the website. You're going to put that up. But also meaningfullife.com/corona, you'll have a bunch of empowering resources for your psychological and
I think you have at the top of your website, the ultimate antivirus empowering resource.
Yeah, that's correct. And I would encourage people subscribe, or through podcast or through WhatsApp or Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, to your daily spiritual antidote. It's really, I'm very proud of it. Every day, 3-minute video, you get it into your inbox or in your text or a podcast. It's like a daily boost, a daily vitamin.
And you don't have to, and I will say, you don't have to be Jewish. I have shared the daily dose and the Rabbi's wisdom. Your teachings are so universal that you will get so much out of it. Rabbi, thank you so much for being here and sharing with me. It's been such an honor to share, and really thank you for creating the platform and the environment, very welcoming. And the most important thing is, may everybody stay healthy and be healthy, and let's learn to thrive and become greater people in the process. Thank you so much. And to everybody else, thank you for doing this. This was the longest episode that we've ever done, and I hope you stayed through the whole thing, because it was just chock full of wisdom and gold. I love you. Stay safe. Have a great rest of the day.